Hello and a very warm welcome to Accenture Presents ET Studios Digital Compass in association with ET CIO. I'm your host Divina Lasson. Now we at ET are thrilled to bring you the very first edition of this series with the aim of providing a 360-degree view on the initiatives that are needed to shape a future digital society. Technology has greatly impacted the world that we live in every single way, from driving business transformation to enhancing our daily lives. And on this series, we will examine the trends and future possibilities with industry stalwarts to highlight the significance of accelerating tech innovation, digital diversity, sustainability, and much more. Now, on this very special inaugural episode, we unpack democratizing tech for a digital society. The most important building block for creating a digital society today is accessibility of technology. And not only private but public sector agencies are increasingly turning to digital channels to provide their services. However, access does remain a key issue. But with the advent of 5G, we are envisioning a very promising future. Without any further ado, it's with great pleasure that I would like to introduce our guest today. Lieutenant General Dr. S.P. Kochar, Director General, COAI. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
And Shrikant Kothari, Head IT, Microsoft India. Welcome. It's a pleasure to have you both here today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So at the onset, I'd like to kickstart this conversation by asking both of you, what does democratizing tech for a digital society mean to you? General, we can start with you.
See, the use of technology to bring services and products to everyone who matters. That is the basic definition of democratizing. And if you can use technology of all types, it's not only telecom technology, IT technology, any type of technology, to uplift society, that to my mind is democratizing technology.
Absolutely. Shrikant, let's get you in on this.
I think very well articulated. I would look at it as sort of a driving force that's building inclusivity in the society as a whole, empowering people who do not necessarily have the means, and kind of bringing them up to sort of an equitable level compared to a lot of others, where technology or information, I would say could have been a differentiator at one point. But, with this democratization, and, India has done sort of a fantastic job with the whole India stack, right? And we very proudly talk about it globally, not just within India, but globally we sort of pitch that very nicely. I think that is sort of, we are kind of at the leading, we're leading it at the forefront with democratizing tech and driving inclusivity at the scale that we are at.
Absolutely. It's a very promising outlook for the future in India, is what I'm hearing from both you gentlemen. Fantastic. General, I would like to ask you now about the ways in which that we've seen sort of reimagining of the entire tech landscape in the recent years, and what are the network capability enhancements that we've seen in India?
See, if you look at technology over decades, what is happening with technology, and again I'm saying, at the cost of repeating, irrespective of what technology we use, what we are doing is we are reducing the time we take to do something, and we are increasing our area of influence. You look at anything, whether you look at highways, you look at airways, you look at technology in the present sense, IT and telecom. We are reducing time, increasing the space in which we act. So this is what has been happening over a period of time. Now, in the last 25 years, ever since mobility came in, this has taken a flip, because you've given the method for an individual to have the device in his hand. And now, initially came 2G. Now, 2G was a technology which was revolutionary at that time. Why was it revolutionary? Because you could carry mobility in your hand. But it was restricted. Then came 3G and 4G. 3G and 4G are clubbed together. So the single piece of equipment which made all the difference was a smartphone. What you have now done is you have given internet in the hand of a person. And on top of that, you brought in apps, you've increased network capability. So he is interacting over the network from wherever he is, right? So that is the advantage. You are manipulating the smartphone. Now with 5G coming in, smartphone will continue to advance, but what will now happen is we are now going to adapt to a flexible network. Up to 4G, what was happening was the users were told that these are our parameters. Within these parameters, please draw your business plans. We will give you whatever, but it is within these parameters. In 5G, that is not going to be the case. You as a user come to me and tell me, hey, this is my business plan. Please engineer your networks accordingly, and I will then engineer my business on that. So that is a very major difference which has happened. And that is something going forward, 5G, 6G, that is what we are going to see. And that brings us endless possibilities, endless opportunities, and also endless risks.
Challenges as well. Absolutely. So on that note, Shrikant, as General Kochar has just explained to us, really the vast potential that we have thanks to the advent of 5G network facilities. Can you help us also understand what are the main challenges that both telecom and internet providers are facing these days with the rollout of 5G?
See, I think what Sirs explains. I think the evolution is fantastic, right? I mean, at the core of innovation is productivity. Right? Eventually, we are empowering more people to go sort of at the at a higher speed and sort of move on faster than what you ever did. But I think the challenges are interesting, right? There is the regulatory side of it, of the environment, which Sir is extremely close to. Maybe not, I'm probably not as close to it. But I think at the core, there is the cost of deployment and the rapid sort of expansion all across, which is probably the biggest challenge in the environment, right? I mean, it took us a while to get 4G out. I think what Jio did, what Airtel did was fantastic, right? I mean, if I look at some statistics, Jio, as they launched, they were practically adding 1 million users a month, and that was tremendous pace of getting access to internet to a vast number of people at a very, very rapid scale. Now imagine the same sort of innovation with 100x the speed of 4G, creates a whole bunch of new use cases for people, brings them a lot more capability, as a whole, which would invariably very hard to get. And especially in sort of the remote environment we live in, today. I mean, COVID taught us a lot, about being sort of in the remote environment. But coming back to the telco side of it, I think cost, of course, is a critical sort of element. But at the same time, and doing it at a cost where it's consumable for people, right? And I think we're by far the lowest cost in the world from a cellular access standpoint. But I think getting 5G at the same speed out is going to change the game completely. So I think these two elements, I would think the telcos hopefully will sort out. I mean, they've done a fantastic job so far. So, and I think rightfully, our government supporting, the whole sort of initiative is fantastic as well.
Absolutely. Let's stay on this topic actually of the challenges. And General Kochar, as we've just discussed, regulatory compliances, cost, speed, these are all factors that we're looking at. What about the general issue with penetration beyond Tier 1 and Tier 2 cities in the country? How can service providers really tackle these, both in the immediate as well as the long term?
Okay, let me first dwell on what he said. Clearly, there are three demarcations in the rollout of 5G or any G. One is policy and regulation, like you said. Second is giving a substrate on which applications will be built. And third is the marketplace. So all three have to be in consonance with each other. Over a period of time, what has happened is information communication technology, electronics, and cyber have merged into one. Inextricably merged. It can't be separated. Right? But if you look at the policy side, it hasn't merged. Policy and regulation for IT is different. Policy and regulation for telecom is different. For cyber is different. So that brings in a dichotomy that needs to be addressed. Okay. Technically, it is merged. Okay. It is. If I may use chemistry, it is a compound. It is not a mixture. Okay. Now you come to application side. Whenever there is a change in generation of a technology, it will take time for applications to come in. Even now, when we are rolling out networks, the mindset is of the learning that we've had in the last 1 decade, and that is 4G. So when we are rolling out 5G, we haven't yet migrated to 5G mindset, and therefore the applications are very few to come about, and not only in India, across the world. Whenever I go abroad and I speak to people there, where 5G has been rolled out for a number of years, same problem, no applications, no killer applications. They're still looking for it. It will come. It will come. But by that time, maybe 5G would have passed and we would get 6G. We don't know. So that is the way. Now coming to your core question of going into the rural areas. It makes eminent sense. Now, if the entire country has to be brought on digital highways, then if you see the urban penetration today is 130%. Okay, you and I carry 2 phones, 3 phones at times. In rural area, it is hardly 50 to 60%. So now with fiberization and the push on fiberization by the government as well as the industry, it makes business sense to go into rural areas. Okay, and I have always been saying that the physical highways are getting congested. The digital highways are the ones that are free, and therefore working from home, working from anywhere is going to become the norm. Decongestion will happen. You won't find people only in metros. They will go and stay in places like Dehradun, Meerut, work from there. And there will be a new cult of people who will be sitting in offices like Microsoft who will do the integration. So the way of life is going to change. And the focus will be on rural area where the applications are there. The government focus is there. The social focus is there. Okay, and the vacuum is there. So it makes sense to go into rural area, and we are going into rural area greatly.
Are there any specific solutions that you're seeing or perhaps forecasting that service providers might tap into to really get maximum access and coverage in the rural areas?
Yes, yes. That's a very good question. You see, 5G is not dependent on spectrum. It is not dependent on a particular spectrum. Unlike the common belief, people say that you require 3.3 gigahertz or you require 1800 megahertz. No, 5G can work on any spectrum. It is just the radio which has to be programmed accordingly. The point is that the higher the spectrum, higher the frequency, the lower is the range, but higher is the capacity.
Right.
So in urban areas, we require capacity more, range will be less. Whereas in rural areas, it is the other way around. So therefore, the frequencies which are going to be used in rural areas are going to be lower frequencies. Coverage is at a premium. Capacity, not so much. It is required, but not so much. Right? So we will see a heterogeneous cloud coming up, where there will be higher frequencies in urban areas, lower frequencies in rural areas. Second thing we will see, standalone and non-standalone 5G. Now, standalone 5G makes eminent sense where there is a lot of industrialization. So there to set up networks only on 5G makes sense. It is economic sense. But if you go into rural areas where 4G is existing, it is better to go into non-standalone 5G. And both of them are interworkable. So if you are a subscriber in a rural area, I am another subscriber, I want to continue with 4G, you want to go on to 5G, we can still talk to each other. Okay, so that sort of heterogeneous things will come up, and that is what is happening today also. The last point I'd like to make is the government is doing a lot of focus on this. Going into the unreachable areas, incentivizing going there, spending USO fund to go into those areas. Those are measures which will take the telecom services into rural areas very fast. Fiberization is another one. Fiberization is a challenge, and I wish you asked that question. That is a big challenge. If that gets sorted out, rollout will be much faster.
And thank you for that insight. How realistic is achieving 1 millisecond latency in that case? And perhaps we should look at the rural and urban divide as well, as you've so articulately pointed out the differences.
The point is 5G gives you certain parameters, technical parameters. Latency is part of that parameter. Okay, so achieving that, if you are deploying 5G, should not be a problem. But where is it required? Ultra low latency will be required for machines, for sensors, which depend greatly on low latency. May not be so for human beings. If you are downloading a movie, how does it matter to you? And I always say that if it takes 10 seconds to download a movie, you can see a movie only in 3 hours or 1 hour. You can't see it in 10 seconds. How does it make a difference? So latency is part of the offering of 5G, more relevant towards machines. But because 5G gives you conversation between machines, humans, sensors, control systems, all of them are meshed into one. Therefore, latency takes a front seat, and therefore it is important.
So I was going to add to the points sir made. I mean, there are three broad applications the way I see it. There is AI, which is rapidly growing. Lots of data getting captured all across. You've got lots of new technology with Chat GPT. A lot of media coverage for sure on that, and it is kind of changing the landscape a little bit. There is the IoT side of devices and which are throwing a lot of data all across, across transportation, across several sort of manufacturing industries. And then there is the edge computing side of it, which is kind of overlapping, but we are capturing so much data on a continuous basis, which needs the bandwidth, which is bandwidth hungry, and it needs there is need for constant connection. You've got autonomous driving, which is sort of coming through, lots of very rapid growth in that area, which is essentially functioning off data connectivity. Right? There's cameras which are capturing lots of information. They're passing it all across. There is gaming. We briefly spoke about gaming earlier. Needs bandwidth hungry core applications. Your kids are playing real time all across the board, and they're sitting all over the place, right? We were talking about rural urban divide. I mean, there's a large gaming industry developing, which needs 1 millisecond, if you will, and I think that's really that is the need of the hour. I mean, fundamentally, applications which do well. You look at all that is sort of floating around you, which do well. The core of them are good speed, right? They're loading fast, they're throwing data back, exchanging information rapidly, and so good networks is like a sort of core bread and butter to a good application. So you need the low latency for them to really accelerate. And you look at our own stack, right? We've got Aadhaar, we've got we've got UPI, we've got the healthcare database coming together very rapidly, and then you've got EdTech, right? I mean, the remote access. I mean, I think in today's environment, you actually don't sort of need to go to school to a large extent, right? If you have the will to learn, there's anything and everything available that can be accessed, and you can learn it. I mean, you're not bound by sort of geography. That I need to be here to learn this sort of new piece of information, but it is available, and I think load times there are still a challenge. EdTech especially, the faster we load these applications, the nicer they become, and the more interactive they become. So lots of use cases. There is the whole mixed reality side of it. That's another sort of area which is very which needs 1 millisecond. Lots of use cases there. We've helped several customers in this space. With strong VR capabilities, you're able to replicate environments which you're not necessarily sitting in, but you have the connectivity to sort of see and visualize, which you wouldn't otherwise. So some very interesting applications, and so we're hungry for 5G to accelerate and move along.
So, no, thank you for sharing that. That actually sort of brings me to the next point as well. As General Kochar was saying, it's also about adopting the 5G mindset to have the sort of the foresight of what it can really do in terms of digital innovation. So in your experience, if I can ask you to highlight some of the early success stories that you're witnessing that could be used as a benchmark moving forward.
See, I mean, the way I look at it, I think there are 2-3 use cases which are evolving very, very rapidly. I'm seeing in the health environment, I mean, the healthcare as a whole, I think is benefiting tremendously with good connectivity. Lots of remote areas. My father happens to be a doctor. I do get exposed to some of that. I mean, until now, he was always of the opinion that I need to, sort of feel the pulse and move along before I would sort of do a diagnosis. Not the case anymore. The mindset's changing. I mean, lots of patients he sees, he says, I don't need you to come. We'll do a video call and boom, right there is consultation happening. And that space, I think, has evolved probably the most rapidly, especially with COVID and, the bad times we saw with it. I think it really brought sort of remote capabilities of healthcare right into the forefront. And I think it can still get a lot better. I mean, this is still very, very basic at this point. The applications are yet to evolve, as you said, that with the speed that is available today. I was with a friend of mine who's a CIO in a large hospital a chain, and they're trying to experiment with some of this. That they've got remote centers all across, but don't necessarily have the doctors with the same skill sets, or in those areas. But now they're able to sort of transmit all this, kind of do robotic assisted surgery with the data capacity that is available. So I think healthcare is probably going to be game changing. Healthcare and edtech, I feel, are the two spaces which will probably benefit the most. I mean, unless
I'd like to add something on that.
Yeah.
Many of the applications we are talking about today could have been done with 4G. Right? Where only humans are involved, we could have done that with 4G. What is so special about 5G, which makes applications different? 5G is a technology which integrates, like I said earlier, it integrates sensors, control systems, machines, including IoT, and human beings. So when he's talking about the healthcare, he's talking about solutions which integrate all of them: doctors, the operating devices, the robotic arms, everything operated through 5G. That is a 5G application, not telemedicine. Right? So that's the difference. Right? Similarly, in edtech, I'm taking it from
Sure.
in 4G, we could have done AR/VR, standalone AR/VR, we could have done, but interactive AR/VR, no, would not have been possible with 4G. So that is the difference which is going to be seen, and that is the mindset which people must understand. And it is the user who has to understand more than the provider. Right? Because then he knows what is the capability of the network that he can use. If he doesn't know that much, how is he going to use that? He doesn't know that he can use saccharin to sweeten his tea, so he will always use sugar. So those are the things that he must understand, and that is the ignorance that we are seeing around, and that will get dispelled, but it will take time.
It was also mentioned in the Union Budget 2023 about all the sort of path-breaking ways in which 5G can impact consumers, but also beyond consumers. I'd just like to know from you, General, in your opinion, what are some of the really exciting possibilities that have opened up as a result of the announcements that were made?
You have opened a hornet's nest. With whatever we've been speaking about so far, the speed and the latency is not going to affect the consumer as much as it is going to affect enterprises. Why? Except for gaming, where you require 5G type of capabilities. In other areas, if you see consumer lot as a standalone category, it doesn't matter whether the speed is this much or this much. It doesn't matter, right? Especially when you have to pay extra, right? But in an industrialized situation where you have to control sensors, static sensors, mobile sensors, human beings, control systems, all those things as one massive whole, there you require 5G. Maybe 5G with a combination of Wi-Fi 6. So with all those things put together, that is the environment we are going to see. And that environment, when it gets implemented, is going to increase our production capability, going to increase the number of jobs that are going to be there. It is going to make the universe as a small little thing without geographical boundaries. You may be working on a Microsoft project which is being handled in US sitting in Delhi, and you may be manipulating machines sitting here, So those are sort of things which are going to come up, and that is what the world is grappling with. Now coming to Indian scenario, for Indian scenario, yes, AI is important, but AI requires an Indian database, because AI, as you know, works on statistical data, on trends. So we are not going to create AI for the user by using data which is imported from the US. You can't. Indian environment is different. So that is going to take time, and that is a physical necessity. It can't happen overnight. That is something people should understand. What can happen overnight is automating networks, if I talk of the telecom space. Because in 5G, most of our components are going to be software dependent, software defined, and hence AI will be capable of controlling those. But because AI itself is a software, it is vulnerable. And because the number of subscribers or the number of entities which gets latched onto a 5G network are huge, sensor is an entity, every sensor is an entity. So therefore, every entity becomes an attack vector. The network is as secure as the weakest link, and there will be so many weak links. So we have to protect that, which puts a challenge on cybersecurity. We have to look at cybersecurity in a different manner, organic cybersecurity, not external cybersecurity, right? So these are the things which are going to emerge. And India is also focused on social upliftment. Like you said, digital divide has to be reduced. So therefore, the applications which are going to emerge in the rural areas, healthcare, rightly said, edtech, rightly said, agriculture, good governance, these are the things which are going to come. It's not only manufacturing, it will be services also. So this is the way I look at it.
Shrikant, let's get you in on this. So many great points.
Yeah, I think fantastic points made. My sense is, as part of the budget, some of the announcements are also in sort of driving some of the innovation. There are 100-odd labs that are going to get created for a lot of these, sort of relevant to local use cases, right? Which I think is the need of the hour. That innovation needs to be spurred all across. There is education needed on what use cases need to sort of come about, and what can you really transform. Right? At the end of the day, there's a very interesting model around tech intensity. Right? So tech intensity is a function of tech capability and tech adoption, and that's sort of covered with sort of a layer of trust. Right? As Sir said, that you need this umbrella of cybersecurity around it. And with AI more so, the use cases are changing very rapidly. You've got content that's getting created on its own, which you could argue, is this the right way or not? But I think fundamentally the side of capability and adoption have to sort of go together. And capability build up, I think the schools play an extremely critical role. Our developers, people who understand the space, need to sort of come up the curve very, very rapidly to build the use cases parallelly, which will impact society at large. And I think going all across and making it ubiquitous, we've done, there are some fantastic strides now. Will UPI benefit? Maybe not. It works fairly well with 4G also. But there are several other use cases like we spoke about, right? And I think that's where the tech intensity across the country needs to improve. As we sort of go all across, we will have the opportunity to bring and uplift a lot of people with this additional productivity, which we are yet to see.
So absolutely. So keeping in mind capability and adoption really at the heart of the strategies we are seeing when it comes to moving towards a digital society. Can you help us understand the role that technology partners will play in really creating this digital society as a reality?
I guess I'm sort of more relevant to the question, but I think organizations, tech organizations, right, are sort of in the business of trying to identify what users don't necessarily know today, right? So our job is to sort of figure out what is the need that you're not necessarily articulating, but you actually need it. So we're trying to figure out what are these use cases where this comes in and fits in, and where will it really amplify end user productivity, end user experience. Experience, I think, is a very critical sort of element in this. So this ability to come up with unarticulated needs, I think is an extremely critical element in driving innovation. Right? A lot of things we see that are already happening and we are using them, but you don't necessarily know what next, right? And what next is what drives innovation, drives productivity and transformation as a whole.
General Kochar, just your views on the future and how these, like we were talking, the role of technology partners in building up a digital future. How is this going to impact
See,
the scenario?
this is going to be a coordinated effort between everybody. We may well see network companies coming up who are only providing a network. Why? Because telecom networks have become essential. It's like an essential service like water and electricity. You can't survive without that, and COVID has proven that, right? It has worked as a catalyst. So while telecom companies will do what they have to, the tech companies will help the users to develop applications which will ride on the telecom networks and provide them the much needed advancement, if I may say. And with the flexibility that the networks provide, like network slicing, edge computing, like you said, edge storage, right? Storage has gone from a cloud to a fog and now to mist, right? So it's not only, they're not only words, they actually mean something, right? I come back to the same thing, that the future, the near future is uncertain. We don't know the application. We don't know the clear-cut application. But we are certain of one thing, that after some time, this is going to be a killer application. 5G is going to be a killer application. So in this interim period, to roll out networks, those are the challenges that are facing us today. To roll out applications, those are the challenges. We have to survive in that period also. And that is where we keep asking the government, hold a hand, hold a hand. This is a national effort. So if we have to bring out networks which are worth the while, which are going to survive for a period of time, hold a hand and let's do it together. And fortunately, we are seeing traction with the government now. So they and the industry are going together. Tech companies are going along with the telcos, with the government. So all of them, all of us have become a big mass. It's a mass movement actually that is happening.
Fantastic. Very rightly said. I think it does need a coordinated effort, and have to sort of work together across domains, across industries.
Yeah, nobody can say I'll do it. Nobody can say.
Yeah. Absolutely, a collaborative effort. So as we slowly come to the close of this fascinating conversation, I'll ask both of you to sort of summarize the challenges that you see in adopting emerging technologies like all the ones we're talking about today, and some of the key solutions that are emerging with the future prospect in India and the world. General.
Challenges we have articulated going along, one challenge is that from the policy side, from the regulatory side, it has to merge with what technology is offering. Technology is going at a very fast pace. Policy is trying to catch up now in the last 2 years. That has to speed up. Policymakers have to hold the hand of players, whether government or private, who are going to roll out networks, who are going to create applications and then take it to public. So that has to happen in the near future. And as far as applications are concerned, like he said, we have to educate the masses and we have to educate the enterprise. The enterprise also does not know what all they can do, what is their potential. So we have to educate them also jointly that this is what we can do for you and this is the type of network facilities we can give you. It is actually limitless. If today, if say in his development center, he says, I want a network with the following SLAs, I will set up my own network. Is that the right way to go? No, it is not. In 4G, it was right. In 5G, I can carve out the same thing by segmenting my radio, which is there, by giving him a slice and giving him edge computing. So those are the things which you will see in 5G coming up. And that will speed up development fantastically. But very important is you will see the type of jobs that are coming up, the type of education and skills that we require are going to undergo a phenomenal change. Phenomenal change. It will no longer be the same jobs. It will no longer be the same type of education and skilling. It will be totally different, concentrating largely on data sciences, control systems, and things which are cognitive. Repetitive things will be taken over by his AI, and that will work that'll work better. But cognitive things, human beings will still be required.
That's such a relevant point. Where do you think we stand today when it comes to having an adequate skilled workforce in India to substantiate the needs of all the tech advancements we're seeing?
We are grappling with it. It's not that that is being ignored. The very fact that we are addressing it, industry as well as the skill ecosystem as well as the government, the very fact we are cognizant that this requires to change means the problem has been addressed and there will be a solution soon. But as of now, like we both of us have been saying, we have to educate the enterprise. What do they want? Only once they know what they want, they will know what type of skills are required. And once that is known, then our system is good enough to start skilling people.
Yeah, I think very well articulated, sir. I mean, there are, from a challenges standpoint, I don't necessarily view them as challenges, right? These are opportunities. I mean, these are productivity opportunities for the nation as a whole, right? And it gives us sort of this platform to really go beyond, the urban centers, right? And I think it pushes the horizons a little bit. And coming back to our earlier discussion on adoption, I think it's up to the industry, the government, holistically, to really come up with solutions which will solve for our core problems. These are, and I mean not tech problems, but society problems, right? Problems in the society. I think that's where those are the challenges which we really need to address, right? And these are tools and mechanisms which will sort of amplify and help those situations and turn them around. I think that's kind of the crux of the way I look at it. I mean, I think these are tremendous opportunities, and I think holistically, government, industry needs to come together and really solve for our larger societal challenges.
In the last 2 years, 2.5 years, we've seen a phenomenal shift. Industry and government are having the same aim, and they're working shoulder to shoulder, not cross purposes. Yes. Earlier it was adversarial, not now. Yes. They're working to improve the system and see that the rollouts take place well and for the betterment of the nation. So that is a very welcome change.
Promising outlook in that case. General Co-Chair Shrikant, thank you so much for being with us today. It's been a wonderful conversation. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Lavina. You've been a lovely host. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for watching and joining us on Accenture Presents ET Studios Digital Campus in association with ETCIO. It's been an extremely insightful conversation on democratizing tech for a digital society. And thank you so much to all of our viewers. For more such in-depth conversations, do stay tuned to ET Studio. Until next time, many thanks for watching, and do stay and watch this space for the next episode on building a digital sustainable world. Stay tuned.